It was one of those warm spring mornings that made everything feel safe. The kind of morning where the sun rose slowly over the rooftops of Ridgeway, Ohio, painting the quiet suburban streets in soft golden light. Lawns were freshly cut. American flags hung from porches, barely moving in the calm breeze. Parents stood in driveways holding coffee mugs, watching their kids rush around with backpacks bouncing against their shoulders. There was laughter in the air, the nervous excitement of a field trip day. Inside Ridgeway Middle School, the hallways buzzed louder than usual. Lockers slammed shut. Sneakers squeaked against polished floors. Teachers tried to organize permission slips while students compared snacks and disposable cameras. Blackwood Caverns State Park wasn't far, just a 2-hour drive, but to a group of 7th graders, it felt like an adventure into the unknown. 25 names were checked off a clipboard. 25 bright, excited faces ready for a day away from textbooks and homework. Out in the parking lot, bus number 17 idled patiently. Its engine hummed low and steady, a familiar mechanical growl that most parents had heard 100 times before. The driver, Thomas Grady, a 42-year-old local who'd been driving school routes for nearly a decade, leaned against the side of the bus, sipping from a thermos. He exchanged casual nods with parents, reassuring smiles that said everything was under control. Nothing about that morning felt unusual. Nothing seemed out of place. One by one, students climbed aboard. Some chose seats near the back, laughing too loudly. Others pressed their faces to the windows, waving dramatically to their families as if they were heading off to summer camp. A teacher took attendance again at the front of the bus, her voice calm and routine. Parents snapped last-minute photos. A mother shouted, "Be good." A father called out, "See you at 5." The doors folded shut with a sharp hiss. At exactly 8:12 a.m., bus number 17 pulled out of the Ridgeway Middle School parking lot. It turned left onto Maple Street, merging onto the quiet highway that cut through miles of wooded land toward Blackwood Caverns. The sun reflected brightly off the yellow paint as it disappeared beyond the tree line. Just another school bus on just another American road, carrying 25 children into what everyone believed would be a normal, unforgettable day. By 10:45 that morning, Blackwood Caverns State Park staff began making quiet phone calls. The Ridgeway group hadn't checked in. At first, no one thought much of it. Field trips ran late all the time, traffic, rest stops, a wrong turn somewhere along the highway. The park ranger assigned to the group simply marked them as delayed and moved on. But back in Ridgeway, the school office started receiving calls from parents who had tried reaching their kids' cell phones, all of them going straight to voicemail. By noon, concern turned into confusion. The school attempted to contact Thomas Grady through the bus radio system. No response. They called his personal phone. It rang once, then went dead. The highway patrol checked traffic reports for accidents along the route to Blackwood Caverns. There were none. No overturned vehicles. No stalled buses. No emergency dispatch records. It was as if bus number 17 had simply slipped between the cracks of the world. At 1:37 p.m., the first official missing vehicle alert was issued. Officers retraced the planned route mile by mile. Gas stations were questioned. Security footage was requested. A clerk at a roadside convenience store claimed he might have seen a yellow school bus pass around 9 a.m., but he wasn't certain. The receipt timestamps didn't help. There were no toll booths along the way. No traffic cameras in that rural stretch of Ohio in 1998. Just long, empty highways surrounded by dense woods. As the hours passed, the search widened. Helicopters swept over miles of forest. Volunteers formed lines along gravel roads and creek beds. Divers were deployed to nearby lakes and reservoirs, scanning murky water for any sign of twisted metal beneath the surface. Search dogs followed faint scents that led nowhere. Officers looked for skid marks, broken branches, anything disturbed along the roadside. But the pavement was clean. The dirt shoulders were untouched. There were no tire tracks veering off into the trees. By nightfall, Ridgeway was no longer calm. Police lights flashed across neighborhoods as officers went door to door, asking if anyone had seen anything unusual that morning. Parents gathered in the school gymnasium, staring at a large map pinned to the wall, red markers tracing possible routes. Every minute felt heavier than the last. The bus hadn't arrived at the park. It hadn't returned to town. It hadn't appeared in any accident report. There was no wreckage. No emergency call. No witness who could say for certain where it had gone. Within days, Ridgeway transformed from a quiet Midwestern town into the center of a national nightmare. Satellite trucks lined the streets outside the middle school. Reporters stood in front of flashing cameras, their voices low and dramatic as they described the unthinkable disappearance of 25 children. Posters with smiling school photos were taped to every storefront window, grocery stores, barber shops, church doors. The faces stared back at passing cars like silent questions no one could answer. The FBI established a temporary command center inside the high school gymnasium. Long folding tables were covered in maps, aerial photographs, and stacks of tip reports. Agents worked around the clock, following every lead no matter how small. Hundreds of volunteers from nearby counties joined the search, walking shoulder to shoulder through thick woods and muddy fields. Helicopters roared overhead day and night. Searchlights cut through darkness. But each sunrise brought the same crushing reality, still nothing. As weeks passed, exhaustion replaced adrenaline. Parents barely slept. Some kept their porch lights on all night, hoping somehow their children would walk back up the driveway. Bedrooms remained untouched, beds made neatly, homework left unfinished on desks, posters hanging exactly as they were that morning. One mother told reporters she could still smell her daughter's shampoo on the pillow. Another father refused to move his son's baseball glove from the kitchen counter where it had been dropped before school. Rumors began spreading faster than facts. Some believed the driver had snapped and taken the children somewhere remote. Others whispered about organized kidnappings or underground trafficking rings operating in the region. There were even darker theories, cult gatherings hidden deep in the forests surrounding Blackwood Caverns. Each rumor ignited fresh waves of fear, but investigators found no solid proof to support any of them. Every theory collapsed under scrutiny, leaving behind only more uncertainty. Months turned into a year. The search parties grew smaller. Media coverage faded. New tragedies replaced the old headlines. Eventually, the official investigation was labeled inactive pending new evidence. But for Ridgeway, time did not move forward. Every May 15th, church bells rang 25 times at noon. Candlelight vigils filled the school parking lot. The town carried an invisible weight, a silence that lingered in grocery store aisles and empty playgrounds, as if something had been taken that could never be returned. By October 2021, Ridgeway looked different than it had in 1998. New neighborhoods had replaced old farmland. A coffee chain stood where a family diner once served pie and black coffee. Teenagers who hadn't even been born when the bus disappeared now walked the halls of Ridgeway Middle School. For many outside the town, the tragedy had become a faded headline, something buried in the archives of late-night true crime shows. But for the people who lived there, the memory had never really left. That fall, a development company purchased a large stretch of land just outside town, near the edge of an abandoned quarry that had been inactive for decades. Plans were approved for a shopping complex, retail stores, a grocery outlet, maybe even a movie theater. Heavy machinery rolled in early one morning. Bulldozers growled. Excavators carved deep into the earth. Dirt piled high in mounds as workers cleared ground that hadn't been disturbed in years. 3 days into excavation, just after sunrise, a bulldozer operator felt resistance beneath the blade. The machine shuddered slightly, metal grinding against something solid. At first, he assumed it was bedrock or leftover industrial debris from the quarry days. He climbed down, brushing dirt away with his glove. Beneath the soil was a smooth, curved surface, not stone, not concrete. Metal. Painted metal. As more earth was scraped aside, a strip of faded yellow emerged from the darkness. The crew grew quiet. One worker joked nervously that it looked like a school bus. No one laughed. They cleared more dirt, revealing a window frame, cracked but intact. Then another. The shape became undeniable. The rounded roof. The black rubber trim. The unmistakable outline of a full-size American school bus, sealed in hardened earth like a fossil. Someone called the site manager. Within minutes, all machinery shut down. The air felt heavier, strangely still. Workers stepped back as more of the vehicle was exposed, inch by inch. And then, partially visible beneath layers of packed soil, faded but readable through years of darkness, were the words painted along the side panel. Ridgeway Schools. By late afternoon, the construction site had transformed into a full-scale crime scene. Yellow police tape stretched across the excavation pit. Patrol cars blocked the access road. State investigators, forensic teams, and FBI agents stood around the partially unearthed bus, their faces tense and unreadable. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live images across the country. The town of Ridgeway held its breath as floodlights were positioned around the buried vehicle, preparing for what everyone feared would be a devastating discovery. Carefully, slowly, The remaining soil was removed from around the bus. The metal body was surprisingly intact. No signs of crushing impact. No visible burn damage. It hadn't twisted or crumpled like a vehicle involved in a violent crash. It looked placed there, deliberately. Once the doors were fully exposed, investigators hesitated for a moment before forcing them open. The hinges groaned loudly, echoing across the quiet pit as stale, trapped air escaped from inside. For a split second, no one moved. Then flashlights pierced the darkness within. Dust floated in the beams of light. The seats stood upright, covered in a thick gray film. Backpacks still hung from seat hooks. A pink jacket lay folded near the back row. Not scattered. Not destroyed. Just left behind. Investigators stepped inside cautiously, boots crunching over dried layers of dirt that had filtered in through small cracks over 2 decades. Every item looked frozen in time, like the children had simply stepped off for a moment and never returned. But there were no bodies. No skeletal remains. No signs of decomposition. No evidence of a violent struggle. The floor was clean except for personal belongings and thin layers of soil. Even the driver's seat was empty. The keys were missing. The dashboard showed no signs of damage. Forensic experts noted something even more unsettling. The emergency exit door at the back of the bus was slightly ajar, its latch bent outward, as if it had been pushed open from the inside. Fingerprints were long gone. DNA samples were minimal after years underground. Yet one detail stood out immediately. There were no signs that anyone had tried to escape in panic. No claw marks on windows. No broken glass. No overturned seats. Everything suggested calm, controlled movement. Whatever happened inside that bus, it hadn't looked like chaos. Once the bus was secured, investigators shifted their focus to the land itself. The abandoned quarry had a complicated history. In 1998, it had been owned by a private excavation company called Midstate Aggregates, a business that, according to public records, abruptly ceased operations just weeks after the disappearance of bus number 17. Financial reports showed no major losses. No lawsuits. No public explanation for the shutdown. It was as if the company had simply packed up and vanished from existence. Detectives dug into old permits, land surveys, and archived construction logs. What they found raised more questions than answers. During the exact week the students disappeared, records showed an unusual spike in excavation activity on the far edge of the property, the same area where the bus had now been discovered. Heavy equipment had been rented. Additional laborists were temporarily hired. Yet there were no corresponding project reports explaining why that section of land had been disturbed. Soil analysis confirmed something chilling. The layers of sediment surrounding the bus were consistent with rapid burial, not gradual accumulation. Experts determined the vehicle had likely been placed in a deep trench and covered intentionally. There were compacted soil patterns that suggested machinery had pressed the earth down firmly, sealing it in place. This wasn't a landslide. It wasn't erosion. It wasn't an accident caused by unstable ground. Someone had gone through considerable effort to hide that bus. Investigators also discovered that several former employees of Midstate Aggregates had relocated out of state within months of the incident. A few had passed away over the years. Others refused interviews. One former supervisor, when contacted, claimed he didn't remember any unusual activity from that time, but phone records placed him near Ridgeway on the morning the bus vanished, despite him officially being off duty. The deeper authorities looked, the more the quarry's history felt carefully erased. Ground-penetrating radar was deployed across the property, scanning for additional anomalies beneath the surface. For days, teams searched for signs of tunnels, secondary burial sites, or hidden chambers carved into the rock walls. The quarry's depth and maze-like structure made it nearly impossible to map completely. There were sections that had collapsed over time, creating unstable caverns beneath solid ground. And somewhere within that vast, hollowed landscape, investigators believed the rest of the truth was still buried. When news broke that bus number 17 had been found, Ridgeway was thrust back into the national spotlight overnight. Major networks replayed old footage from 1998, crying parents, search helicopters, faded missing posters taped to brick walls. True crime podcasts reopened the case. Former students, now adults in their 30s, gave interviews about classmates they barely had the chance to know. The story that once felt like a distant tragedy was suddenly alive again, pulsing through television screens across America. The FBI officially reclassified the case as an active criminal investigation. A new task force was formed, combining veteran agents who remembered the original search with younger investigators raised on advanced forensic technology. Digital reconstructions were created. Satellite imagery from the late 90s was re-examined. Archived 911 calls were enhanced and replayed. Every tip that had once been dismissed was pulled from storage and reviewed line by line. Yet despite all the new tools and fresh attention, the central mystery remained untouched. 25 children were still missing. For the families, the discovery of the bus reopened wounds that had never fully healed. Some parents had grown old waiting. A few had passed away without answers. Those still living returned to the school steps each May 15th, standing quietly beneath the flagpole as 25 candles flickered in the wind. They no longer asked for miracles. They asked for truth. Even if it hurt. Even if it destroyed whatever fragile piece they had managed to build over 2 decades. The quarry site itself became something of a dark landmark. Locals avoided driving near it after sunset. Teenagers dared each other to sneak past the police barricades. Some claimed they heard strange echoes bouncing off the rock walls late at night, distant metallic sounds, like something shifting underground. Others swore they saw flashlights flickering deep within the abandoned sections long after investigators had left for the evening. Official reports dismissed these as trespassers or wildlife, but the rumors refused to die. Across the country, the Ridgeway 25 became more than just a missing persons case. It became a symbol of unanswered questions, of secrets buried too deep, of a system that may have overlooked something crucial back in 1998. Every documentary ended with the same chilling line: the bus was found, but the children were not. And somewhere out there, beyond the quarry walls and beyond the headlines, the full story of what happened that morning still waits in the dark. As the investigation continues, the town of Ridgeway remains haunted by questions that may never be answered. 25 children vanished into thin air, and even after 23 years, the truth remains buried alongside bus number 17. Families, friends, and investigators alike are left with a chilling reality. Some mysteries are too deep, too dark, to ever fully uncover. And yet, every time the wind whistles through the old quarry, every time the leaves rustle in the woods along that long-forgotten road, it feels as if the past is still watching, waiting for someone brave enough to finally uncover the secrets it has hidden for over 2 decades. Because in Ridgeway, the story isn't over. Not yet.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.